This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, I'm so glad to have tonight on my show one of my favorite senators, not only my favorite state senator, but one of my favorite people in the world. And he also, I claim kin to him. His name is Will Barfoot, and all y'all in Montgomery know Will Barfoot. He represents Pike Road and all the upscale as the eastern area of Montgomery. It's eastern like all Wind Lakes and all that area out there, but he has about 4 other counties too. I'll let him tell you where all it is. He's began his second term in the state senate. He's a very popular state senator, and like I say, he's my favorites. And he's going to be chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He's a lawyer by profession, has a prominent law practice here in Montgomery. We're in the River region, Barfoot and Schumacher. And he's a grand man. Will, good to have you on the show.
It's always good to be here. Thank you for having me, Steve.
We text each other all the time, every week. He's about one of my best friends, like old Keith Watkins is. I talk to Keith Watkins every week, who's a federal judge here. We grew up together here in Troy. But Will Barfoot and I kin from China Grove and Pike Road. He lives right where he grew up. I know all y'all think nobody's original person from Pike Road because half the country's moved there. It's like Atlanta. You know, it's the fastest growing city in the state, a town in the state. They don't call themselves a city yet. But he's an original Pike Road person. He still lives in this area.
That's right. I guess my grandparents were from Pike Road area, or not originally from Pike County in South Montgomery County, but and some from Crenshaw. But I grew up from the time I was 6 years old, lived in Pike Road, and boy, it's changed a lot, Steve.
You know, if you look at a map, Will and I really are kin to each other. My mama's people were Grants from China Grove, and I studied my family's history for years, and I saw in my family genealogy Barfoots. One of my great-great-grandmamas on the Grant side married a Barfoot. And if you look at a map, Pike Road and Pike County, right there next, that's the reason it's named Pike Road, in South Montgomery County, and then China Grove's right on the tip of North Pike County. So he knew he had relatives there, but the first time I recognized it, and Will got in politics later, he's a lot younger than me. Will's not about 50 years old, but he's got an older uncle named Joel Barfoot, who was on the county commission here in Montgomery County. And the first time I met Joel, he looked at me and said, "Flowers, we kin to each other." I said, "Joel, I think we are too," because I'd seen that Barfoot in my genealogy. And he told me he already knew about it.
We're close enough kin to where we can claim each other when we need to, and
That's
distance
right.
from each other when you don't want to know me.
That's exactly right.
Double first cousins, I think, maybe even on the Youngblood side from Pike County.
Speaking of that, I want to thank you. Even though it's not in your district, you were always a fan and loved Senator Jimmy Holly, who served 40 years from Pike, and he's from Coffee County, of course, but he had Pike, Coffee, and Covington, and part of Dale.
Yeah.
And we had a nice ceremony for him at the Pike Pioneer Museum. He'd done a lot for us on his way out the door. But you took time on a Saturday to come down to Pike County, and even though it's not in your district, and speak for old Jimmy Holly, and he appreciated it, and I did too.
Well, I think I said, in summary, I said Senator Holly reminded me of 3 people that you could connect him to, and one was E.F. Hutton, that when Senator Holly spoke, everybody listened. Some of the older folks may remember those commercials. One was, the second one would be Coach Bryant, that he was a leader of men, people. And the third one is that it was pretty close to Christmas time, and I think I recall saying that it reminded me of It's a Wonderful Life because of all the people he'd affected, and what would this state be like without him. And those are 3 characters that he embodies what those 3 individuals or even the movie stood for. And he made a huge impact on the state of Alabama, and my short 4 years in the state senate, he made an impact on me.
You know, he did, and he left an indelible mark in a quiet way. He didn't want a lot of flamboyant or recognition. We all recognized him in the last few months. I went to one thing for him in Enterprise the other Saturday morning, pretty much like the one we did for you that you came to in Pike County. But you know, I've got to know you and Clyde Chambliss real well over the last 5 or 10 years, and y'all not just represent the River region well, but y'all two of the finest men and two of the best senators I've seen in a long time.
Thank you.
Two good friends of mine. I'd like to have y'all on the show once a year. But I've had other ones like Gudger from Coleman and other ones like that. Y'all, when they're having the seating arrangement, everybody wanted to sit by Holly because you knew you'd learn the rules from him.
No question, and I was fortunate enough to sit a row behind him, close enough to where I could ask questions, and the senators that would sit on one side of him, when they got up to go to the bathroom, there was almost a fight to see who was going to be able to sit in their chair to ask Senator Holly.
Chambliss actually sat next to him, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Chambliss has problem. Speaking of that, Clyde Chambliss has a toga, is his heart of his district, but you've got, tell the viewers what all your district entails. We mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's got Pike Road and all the eastern part of Montgomery County. But you also get 4 other counties, don't you?
Well, I have a total of 3, so I've got all of Crenshaw County, and 3/4 of Montgomery County land-wise, which includes most of South Montgomery County, Pike Road, kind of the eastern
The
portion.
Raymer areas in your
Raymer,
district?
Dublin, you know, Grady area. And then I go into Montgomery, depending on how the map flows, because it does look kind of cut up a little bit, but parts of the city limits of Montgomery, including Wind Lakes and the eastern portion. And then also a pretty good majority of the landmass of Elmore County, Titus and Tallahassee and Eclectic and Wetumpka and some of the areas up there.
Millbrook in your district?
Millbrook's not. I'll tell you, yesterday had an opportunity to, unfortunate opportunity, but to visit some of the areas up in Elmore County had been devastated by the tornadoes, and it was amazing to me a couple of things. First of all, February 5th, 1987, our house burned down, and
in
so
Pike Road?
In Pike Road. And so I know from that standpoint, as a young man, teenager, I think what some of those folks are feeling when you lose everything except 4 walls and a chimney and you don't have anything. But what I saw yesterday in Elmore County, the places we visited and the people that we talked to, are a sense of community, family, friends, and neighbors, church members who are all helping each other out. And then I saw something else, and we chastise, I think, government, and rightly so sometimes. But at the local level, we saw County Commissioner Henry Hines, we saw Bart Mercer, other members of the County Commission, Richie Byers, the engineer up there in Elmore County. At the state level, you know, you had senators and House members. Representative Troy Stubbs was there. I think Speaker of the House came up after later on to view some of that and maybe help some. And then at the state level, Governor Ivey, of course, had been through Watauga County, and you had Senator Katie Britt that was there yesterday. And
yesterday she came?
Yesterday, and then representative from Senator Tuberville's office, Cindy Pate, was there. So you saw all levels of government that were trying to aid. And by the way, I think most folks don't want a handout from the government. They want, you know, they can handle things themselves, generally speaking, but they want to know that they're there, and they want to know that people are thinking about them. And to the extent that government can aid in the system, we're going to try to do that.
Well, we've got good officials. Kay stays on top of things as governor, and Katie Britt seems to have gotten off on a good start as our senator. And of course, you do a good job with your people. Every time I talk to somebody, you've been around your district. You speaking of that, I mean, you talking about him being a good senator. He's a good politician too.
Yeah.
When he ran his first time, he carried every box in all those counties y'all mentioned, not just his home area, Montgomery and Pike Road, but he carried. And let me tell you, he ran like a scalded dog through Crenshaw. I hope nobody ever tried to run against him in Crenshaw. You know, I said something about Jimmy Holly at this thing, Enterprise, the other day, and I referred to Iris Paul. He was a circuit judge that had Pike in the Pike and Coffee County Circuit when I was a little boy. And I asked my old probate judge in Pike County one day when I was growing up learning about politics, I says, Judge Reeves, who is the most popular politician in Pike County? He says, he don't live in Pike County. It's Judge Iris Paul, who lives in Coffee County. And I gave Jimmy Holly that acclamation because Jimmy, as a young legislator, we'd sit together for 15 years, I knew this about him. He'd go visit with Judge Eris Paul every Friday morning just for advice and counsel, like y'all did with Jimmy. He would go see Judge Eris Paul, and I said, and let me tell y'all something. Jimmy Holly right here may be the most popular politician in Pike County, but lives in coffee.
Lives in coffee, that's
the same way that Eris Paul was. I bet you right now, and I'm not going to ask you to toot your own horn, but I know enough about our area of state politics. I bet you right now, if you ask the folks in Crenshaw County who's the most popular politician in Crenshaw County, they'll say Will Barfoot in Montgomery County.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think there's some good folks in government down there. You got a lot of good folks on the county commission and the probate judge, Judge Tate down there. But I do think that it's I'm very humbled by the vote that I've gotten across the district, and specifically in Crenshaw County.
Well, you worked it. Yeah. You know, it wasn't just given to you.
Well, when you get out and you meet folks and talk to them, and not only talking to them, but the important part of that equation is you listen to them, right? And you know, hey, listen, we're public servants, and to be a servant, you got to listen to the folks that that vote for you, the folks that put you on the ballot.
Yeah, recently I was, I don't know whether you told me this or Twinkle did. You know, Twinkle's done a lot of campaigning in between her terms. And I asked her, I called her one day, she called me one. I said, what you been doing, Twinkle? Said, I've been in Crenshaw County for a chicken plant opening. I was down there with Will Barfoot. And I said, well, you were the good one. I said, y'all are sure enough working. And it wasn't a big plant opening or anything, was it?
Yeah, it was actually some existing houses, and we went through the Poultry Association. Kind of gave us an opportunity to go back through, look at some of the houses and the operations, some of the issues that affect folks that are in that line of business. I mean, you think about it, the poultry industry in the state of Alabama is one of the top industries out there, and we're either number one or number two, depending on which day you ask, I think, as far as poultry is associated. So huge industry statewide, and something that's big in Crenshaw County for sure.
Well, back to that, talking about the poultry, it reminded me, Governor Ivey's beginning her second 4-year term. We saw her sworn in Monday. You and I both were there, and she's done a good job as governor. She realized some things, but when she really put the foot to the metal to pass that gas tax in that first year, and I would ask some of those guys from North Alabama like Schofield, Senator Clay Schofield and Senator Steve Livingston, I said, why y'all so much for that gas tax? And they said, Flowers, it's going to help our area, but let me tell you what it's going to do. It's going to open up that port down there. There was some money in that rebuild Alabama going to the port. Now Shelby deserves most of the credit for that. There's
a lot of credit to Senator Shelby. I mean, the amount of federal funds that have come back to Alabama in lots of different areas, not just the port.
Oh yeah.
And you've written some columns about that. But Mobile Port has now the opportunity to, increase in stature to carry heavy loads, more tonnage that comes through there now, and I think that benefits not just the folks around Mobile, but it does benefit the state as a whole.
Senator Shelby worked on that thing for a long time. I remember after he finished running for his last 6-year term, he told some of us close to him, right off the bat, said, I'm not running anymore. He must have had 15,000 people beg him to run again, as much as he did for Alabama. And I knew he would have, but I never did say it. I said, don't ask me to run, I'm not going to run. And so I didn't. But we were having supper together at a restaurant in Birmingham he liked to go to. It was right after he got elected, about this time 6 years ago. And we were cutting up and telling jokes and everything. And then he looked at me seriously. He said, before I quit, I'm gonna do one thing. Did a lot more than one thing. Sure. Moved the FBI headquarters from Washington to Huntsville, one thing.
Pretty big, isn't it?
Yeah, but he said, I'm gonna widen and deepen that port in Mobile. And I said, I'm gonna get it done. It's gonna cost a lot of money. I'm gonna get the money for it. It's gonna cost $600 million. So over the time, he's raised $600 million. His last hurrah, he got 200 to finish it off. That's real money.
That's big money, and it benefits, like I said, not only the folks around Mobile.
Exactly.
Statewide, there's a rail connection to Mobile from Montgomery, the Hyundai plant, and just all sorts of commerce that will now flow into or out of that port that will benefit, create jobs in the state of Alabama. So it's a big plus for Alabama.
That's what he told me, what resonated with him, and that I get off my point, I forget where I am. Schofield and Livingston told me, he said, Flowers, it helps our chicken business. That's the biggest industry up there, is poultry. And they said it helps our farmers. But what Shelby told me is, he says, we can't ship our vehicles made in Alabama through that port. The Mercedes cars and Vance and your plant, the Hyundai plant here in Montgomery, have to go to Savannah, Georgia.
Yeah.
Now, isn't that a shame?
Yeah.
So that when this is all done, Mobile can be like Houston.
It'll be a big benefit and continued benefit. It's not just a flash in the pan. I think, you'll see more of that commerce, and actually I think it's probably not for just the industries that are already here, but it'll help draw in other industries to in the state. One thing I think we got to worry about though is the labor participation. Mm-hmm. You can talk about you talk about the unemployment rate, and that's a good metrics on certain things, but the unemployment rate can be low, but we've got to have a higher labor participation. And I think Lieutenant Governor has done a very good job of trying to, skilled people with their hands. Everybody doesn't need a 4-year degree. It's not for everybody.
You're exactly right.
My oldest son works in paper mills and does shutdown work for them. And listen, at 20 years old, he's probably making as much as I was after I graduated law school. So there's a need for skilled workforce out there for labor participation. We need to get that up, and we're certainly trying to do that.
Well, you hit the nail right on the head, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because I was having a conversation with Jimmy Baker, who's head of the community college system. It's so obvious that with our economy, in today's economy, that if you're a kid growing up in Montgomery or the River region, there are a lot more opportunities with the Hyundai plant, with Maxwell Gunner, with what we've got here, to have a trade or profession and a craft than a college degree. I'm not trying to make light of a college degree, but I'm just saying that we've got to realize our economies of the future is not, they're looking at people out there at that Hyundai plant, aren't they?
No question. I think, and again, as you said, it's not that the college degrees are not important. They are, but a college degree is not for everybody, right? No. Learning a trade or a skill is not for everybody, but I think we've got a need for both of those areas, both of those particular things that we need to focus on. And for far too long, Mike Rowe did Dirty Jobs, that TV show, and dirty jobs are an essential element of making our economy work, and we can't forget about the folks out in the field. We can't forget about the folks in the manufacturing plants. We can't forget about the folks who, are working in the steel mills or working in timber mills, and that's an integral part of our economy. And we got to make sure we got the workforce available to handle those needs for the employers.
Will, speaking of this, let's move in that area, same area. You and I watched Governor Ivey talk about her plans for the next 4 years, and she has come the last 4 or 5 months in her inaugural speech. She says, I'm going to make myself the education governor in this 4-year term I've got coming up. And it's sort of been a nebulous thing, but I hope part of her plan, and you might know more about it than I do, or what she has elaborated on. She unveiled a little bit of it in her speech Monday, but what do you foresee? Is her plan, will it help in that area we're talking about, build jobs and for people who are not able to get, don't want to go to college?
I think let's we'll find out some more details, I guess, probably in the state address, and see some specifics that the governor has, and certainly know she's in tune to to that, to make sure that we have those skilled labor folks there. The other part of that equation is that I'm hopeful that we can address is maybe some type of parental choice in education. You've got failing school districts and throughout the state. Some of them are, listen, we've got some good school districts and we've got some good schools, but you've got some that are subpar, to say the least. And can you imagine being a parent raising a child in that district that, without having a choice of sending them to private school or otherwise, So we need to address that parental choice in education. Public schools are an integral part of it. We shouldn't take away from public schools, and we need to make sure that they're healthy and vibrant. But you know, when parents have a choice as to how they're going to educate their kids and where they're going to educate their kids, I think you have a better product. And I think that's something we need to focus on. And I think, quite honestly, this quadrennium and hopefully this session, something will come up with that.
Will, you'll be a Republican, of course, from Pike Road, this area of the state, Republican district. But the vast supermajority of the state Senate is Republican. You're in a group of 27 Republicans, only 8 Democrats. So Republicans totally control the Senate. Is the governor asking for y'all's input? What I'm getting around to asking you, the parental choice issue, if that's part of her package, is that a prevailing thought in most of the Republican state senators? Is that something that most state senators are going to tell her? Has she come to you and asked your thoughts on it?
Well, let me address. So I think philosophically, and I'm not speaking for all of my Republican counterparts in the Senate, but I think philosophically most people would agree with that. I think the problem is that you have areas of the state and districts of the state who either have really good school districts or they believe they have really good school districts, and they're a little worried about what that does in their area. You know, how is it going to affect if I've got something good going? How is that going to negatively affect? And I think that's the devil in the details. Let's work that out to make sure we don't adversely affect the good school systems, good school districts out there, and make sure that, you know, those continue. But at the same time, we give, you know, parents choice about where they want to educate their kids.
You're talking about exactly what I'd be thinking if I was a Republican state senator in the majority of the state. If you look at our state, we've got a pretty tremendous gulf between school systems. I mean, and it's based on demographics and economic system. I mean, it's just a matter of fact. If you look at Mountain Brook, Vestavia, Homewood, and Jefferson, Pike Road, some of the schools in Baldwin County, you know, those are some of the best schools. They compare with any school in New York or Connecticut. But then we have the Black Belt schools, you know, of Lowndes and some other counties that don't have the resources,
right,
and don't have the, you know, it's a different economic group. There's a vast difference, and I don't know if where she's trying to go with this, or whether you can resolve it with money.
Yeah, I think money is always, you know, most of the problems at least we think of in state government. Money is always a part of that solution, but I don't think it's the only solution to the problem. And I think, you know, if you reallocate some of the resources that are already there, I think you can probably change the dynamics of that. But you're right. I mean, to say that education in Alabama is broken is not a fair statement, because there are pockets in the state that are doing really well. For instance, even here in Montgomery County, MPS, you've got Baldwin and Lamp and BTW. You've got some magnet schools that are the top among the state, heck, even among some of the top in the nation. At one point in time, Lamp, and I haven't seen these statistics on it here lately, but Lamp was, I think, top 25 consistently on national public schools. So the ability to teach and to learn is there, and we just got to make sure that, you know, we have the resources available at the local level to make those adjustments. And I think part of that is giving the parents an opportunity to make a decision for what best fits their own children.
Will, speaking of that, you know, with us being here in the river region, you being in Montgomery and representing the areas around Montgomery and in Montgomery County, that's always puzzled me. I've seen those same thing with those Lamp school scores are up there among Vestavia and Mountain Brook and the private schools here in Montgomery. The scores there, if not excel. Can your kids at Pike Road go to Lamp, or can your kids in Otago County and Elmore, how do they choose those kids to go to Lamp?
Yeah, you have to live within Montgomery Public School District. So for a while when Pike Road school system started, it was only, I don't remember exactly, K through 6 or K through 8 to begin with. So if you had a child that lived in Pike Road and for instance was in the 9th grade and Pike Road didn't offer that, you could still attend the public schools. Now, over the past several years, matter of fact, Pike Road graduated the first class, I think, 2 years ago. So now any of those children who are in, you know, those grades K through 12, if you live in the Pike Road district, then you'd be going to Pike Road School. What we did, though, one of the initiatives that the Lieutenant Governor had, I think and it has to do with the BRAC Commission, is making schools available, you know, the LAMP school, for instance, the public schools, the magnet schools available to those soldiers and sailors that come in here, military folks that come in here to Maxwell. That's a big thing, because that was one of the things that the BRAC Commission was looking at is
Right.
you know, the education system around, and the viability of bringing the whole family here, not just the service member to come in, but bringing their family with them. So we made a change to where some of those things, regulatory wise, can change, and then also so we'll have a startup a charter that the military members can attend.
Yeah, that's very important. You know, people don't realize, as you grew up here like you have, how important the military and military retirees are to this area of the state.
No question.
I remember sitting here one time and asking Todd Strange about that. I thought the state government was the largest employer. I said, is it something about state government being the largest employer? He said, that's not our biggest employer, Steve. I said, was Hunter bigger than that? And they said, no, it's Maxwell Gunter.
Yeah, you think of all the folks that come from around the world into Montgomery, Alabama, and you know, whether they may only be here for 9 or 10 months, but they add to the economy, they add to our way of life, and quite honestly, a lot of them, when they get ready to retire, may come back here, and you know, I think that's a huge benefit. Most of those folks are, you know, solid citizens, and
they really are.
Continue to work, and even on the civil side of the thing. So, very fortunate that I'm on the Veterans Affairs Committee, one of the committees I'm on, and in the Senate, and you know, we deal somewhat with those issues that affect you know, the federal the bases here, and try to make sure that Alabama is a military friendly place to live and work.
Well, you realize that, having grown up here, how important it is. Well, folks, our time's up. It goes by in a hurry. I had so much I want to talk to Will about, but maybe we'll have him on after the session starts. This is beginning of the session time and beginning of the quadrennium, but our guest tonight's been one of my favorite state senators and one of the best state senators, Will Barfoot from Pike Road, represents part of all of eastern Montgomery and parts of Tog and Elmore and all of Crenshaw. And we thank you viewers for watching. We thank Senator Barfoot, who takes time out of his busy schedule to be with us. He got to practice law here in Montgomery too, so he takes time out of his busy schedule. We thank Senator Will Barfoot, and thank you viewers for watching. Hope you tune again next week. Thank you. Thank you, Will.